Hi guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel, and we're back again with Sagwadi Wakara Butla at Tutorials by Sagwi. Okay, we're continuing with family law, right? Under section 1, marriage law. Okay, so just a quick recap. We said that the requirements in order to conclude a valid marriage, civil marriage, these are the requirements. The parties must have capacity to act. There must be an agreement, consensus between the parties to enter into a civil marriage with each other. The marriage between the parties must be lawful. The prescribed formalities must be compelled with. All right. And I said to you in the study guide, when you open your study guide, you're going to start with the engagement, but you must have that information or know it on a need to know basis, right? So now we're gonna move on to let's just look back at the lawfulness of the marriage. Okay, the where it says that the marriage must be lawful, there are degrees of people or relationships, people who cannot get married according to their relationship. We are talking about blood relationship by marriage, for example. Blood relatives in direct line may not marry. In terms of this rule, you may never marry your ascendants or your descendants. You may thus not marry one of your parents, grandparents, or children. Okay, blood relatives in collateral line may not marry if either of them is related to a common ancestor within the first degree of generation. Thus, in this rule, you may not marry your brother or sister or any of their children or grandchildren because you are related within the first degree of common ancestors. That is your parents and your brothers or your sister's parents, who are exactly the same people. So you cannot, okay, persons related to each other by an affinity in the direct line may not marry. In terms of this rule, you may not marry your ex-spouse blood relatives in the direct line. Mara, they say that when you break up with who date the father, a marriage between you and your ex-spouse mother or father, or your ex-spouse child born from a previous or subsequent relationship, subsequent marriage, is therefore prohibited. Persons related to each other by an affinity in the collateral line are allowed to marry. In terms of this rule, you may marry your ex-spouse brother or your sister. You may marry your ex-spouse brother or sister, or your brother-in-law or sister-in-law, or cousin or nephew. You should also make sure you have the degrees of relationship as calculated. There's a diagram in your study guide that has that, right? We are still under section 1, marriage law. So now we are going to move on to study unit 2. In study unit 2, we are going to deal with voidable and putative civil marriages. Let's talk about this, okay? Oh gosh, I hope I'm appearing nicely because the camera is turned around. Or the phone, should I say. Okay. First, we are going to define this concept, right? The distinction between void and voidable marriages. A marriage is voidable on the strength of the circumstances which present before or at the time of the wedding, and it may be annulled. A divorce is granted on the strength of the circumstances that developed during the marriage. Okay. We know that ordinarily a void marriage does not have any legal consequences. There are some statutory exceptions. Section 6 of the Marriage Act, a marriage is solemnized by a person who's not a marriage solemnized by a person who is not a marriage officer is void, but it can be rectified by the Minister of Home Affairs, and it will be valid. Section 26 of the Marriage Act, a boy under 18 or a girl under 15 cannot marry without the consent of the Minister of Home Affairs. Marriage contracted without his consent is void, but the minister may ratify the marriage. Then it will be valid. Common law exception, putative marriage. Okay, let's go back to your study guide, right? Let's see what your study guide says. You need to be able to differentiate between a void marriage and a voidable marriage. So a void marriage is a marriage that never existed. It's a marriage that does not have any consequences of an existing marriage, you know. There's no divorce, there's nothing to take. That marriage is null and void. A voidable marriage is a marriage that has prescribed, is a marriage that has complied with all the requirements to conclude a valid marriage, but there are some things that can make the marriage voidable. I'll give you an example. You can meet with a lady now, with me, here in Joburg, and you and I, we go and sign at Home Affairs. We take our IDs, we sign, only to find that you have a wife at home in the villages that you married traditionally. They are not on the system. That makes that our marriage, when we went to sign at Home Affairs, was valid, very valid, because we did everything the right way with the marriage officer. We submitted our IDs, we said everything was compiled with. But there are situations that arise, like when you have a wife at home. This makes our marriage voidable. So our marriage is valid until somebody takes an action to say, no, but this is my husband. Then the minister can make our marriage to be void, can void our marriage. So that's what makes the marriage to be voidable. So the marriage was valid, but there are circumstances around it that can nullify and make the marriage to be voidable. I hope I made it clear there. You can understand now between a void and a voidable marriage. Voidable marriage is the one that has compiled with all the requirements and is valid in the eyes of the state, but there are circumstances around it that should anybody raise against that marriage to say, no, but I have proof, this guy married me 10 years ago and we never divorced, my marriage becomes voidable. All right. The consequences of a void marriage. The consequences of a void marriage is explained in page 36 of your textbook. Remember, a void marriage means that legally no marriage has been concluded. In a nutshell, the effect of the marriage is the following. A void marriage does not affect your status. The status of the party as a void marriage does not confer any consequences of marriage on the parties or their children. No matrimonial no matrimonial property system is operative between the parties. There is no reciprocal duty of support between the parties. The parties may not inherit interstate from each other. The parties' children are children born of unmarried parents. Both the parties are free to enter into another marriage, civil union, or customary marriage, because the marriage never existed. It's void. And maybe it was voided by what? Maybe this person married me and I do not have capacity to act. They married me and I'm mentally ill. You know? Yeah. So that's a material, that's me and this person, we did not comply with the formalities of concluding a valid marriage, so that marriage becomes void. The grounds for nullity of a marriage. There are two grounds: non-compliance with formal requirements, non-compliance with the material requirements. Non-compliance with formal requirements. The marriage is solemnized by someone who is not a competent marriage officer. So if you go to a church and you get married by somebody who is not seen as by Home Affairs as a competent marriage officer, you're playing. So when you see pastors marrying people, they are signing something there. Those people, they have some rights, something. They have something to take to Home Affairs, that they are valid officers to do so. A girl under 15 years, a boy under 18 did not get consent from the Minister of Home Affairs. It's non-compliance. No witnesses were present at the marriage. It is non-compliant, which is a ground for the nullity of a marriage. Non-compliance with material requirements. Both parties are okay. One party is already married to someone else. Voidable marriage, as I explained. They are related with the prohibited degrees that I was explaining, that you can't marry your child again. One of them is insane at the time of the marriage. It makes the marriage to be voidable. Right. Another ground is minority. Minority is when I've mentioned the 15-year-old and 18-year-old boy. Undue influence. The grounds for setting aside a voidable marriage is what I've been explaining. And undue influence. Sterility. If a partner did not disclose that they are sterile to you, it can render a marriage voidable, because that's misrepresentation and misleading you. Impotence. If they don't tell you these important things. Impotence. If somebody's impotent, they can't at all have kids, I believe. If they don't tell you this, and you are you're getting married under misrepresentation, which is a requirement for concluding a valid marriage, that there must be all the honesty at the time. So if this person is misrepresenting themselves to you and you find out, you can set aside a marriage. Material mistake, we've already spoken about it. Okay, let me explain these pointers some more. Sterility. What is the difference between sterility and impotence? Impotence is the inability to have sexual intercourse. I'm sorry, I forgot. Okay, impotence is the inability to have sexual intercourse. With sterility, the party can have sexual intercourse but is infertile. These are okay. So if they don't reveal this important information to you before the marriage, it's misleading you. Impotence is the inability to have sexual intercourse. The marriage is voidable if the one spouse proves that the other was impotent before contracting the marriage and remains impotent, and he was unaware of the impotence at the time of the marriage. The impotence can only apply for annulment provided he was unaware of his impotence at the time of the marriage. Permutative marriage. This is where one or both the parties are unaware at the time of contracting the marriage of the defect, which renders their marriage void, and believe in good faith they are lawfully married. Such a marriage is void. Right, guys, we will continue in the next video. You see, I even made a mistake with impotence, but I'm glad I rectified it. Let me come back with another video feeling fresher. I love you so much. Thank you so much for supporting my channel. keep watching. I understand that it's second year, it's very nice, but yeah, PVL is, you saw PVL in first year, so it gets harder, it gets harder as you go up, but keep a straight head, you're gonna get it right. If you have any questions and you need clarity, you need me to explain something more and more, please let me know. I will try my best to put it in the best way that you will understand. I love you so much. Mwah.